Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Is a silent retirement crisis looming on the horizon? There's a bit of a math problem for government-sponsored pension systems globally, including our Social Security program here in the U.S. But the good news is Philip Statler is here to walk us through it today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm Jen Rezac alongside Philip. He is, of course, president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. And not to start things off too bleak and dreary and all the things, this silent retirement crisis, but I hope you're doing great.
Doing well today. We're just looking forward to this earnings season, and hopefully it will have some bright lights and will kind of let the Fed stop raising interest rates. That would be a big win for this quarter.
That'd be really, really nice. Well, I want to get your reaction to a couple things here, Philip. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, and he recently sent out what he calls his annual chairman's letter to investors. And I have a couple of quotes here that I want to read for you. He says, "There's a crisis that doesn't make headlines or attract attention because it's not immediate. It's not this year or even next year's problem, but it is a crisis, and the longer we delay the conversation about it, the larger the crisis grows." So what is he talking about? Well, he went on to write that the combination of longer lifespans for current retirees and falling fertility rates among younger generations is leading to financial shortfalls in funding public pension systems. I'm guessing, Philip, this is not news to you as far as what we're seeing here.
It's not. And you know, if you think about the demographic I'm in, we've been looking at what is Social Security. I mean, specifically, right? Social Security. There's other governments that are going to have other issues as well. But just think about what this whole deal, inflation, is doing to a lot of pensions, Social Security being probably the biggest one.
Right.
Now, there are some pensions that don't go up, right? They don't have a cost of living, but most government pensions do. What we're seeing right now is that those pension payments are rising drastically, and that's tough on those government pensions trying to keep pace.
There's a stat, Philip, that we've talked about for a long time on this show, and that is something along the lines of about 10,000 baby boomers turn 65 every day. So we've got this huge wave of people, this big generation that is heading into retirement. That means we're going to start tapping into our retirement savings and taking Social Security while there are fewer people starting to pay into that. Now, you work with a lot of people who do have savings in a 401k or an IRA, but Social Security, that is going to be part of their retirement income strategy. Not going to make up their whole thing, of course, but it's going to be part of it. How do you talk to people about getting the most out of this important benefit? Because this is a huge part of our retirement, and a lot of people are starting to tap into this.
Well, you know, we have the conversation on when's the right time to take it, because of all this looming, glooming bad news that people keep bringing up periodically. You know, a lot of people, it causes them to think that they should be taking it earlier because they don't want to not get their share. However, when they do that, it's not necessarily to their benefit because they're giving up so much more on the other side when it comes to that Social Security benefit. My recommendation is always to let's lay out the actual math. And let's look at the numbers to determine when is the best time for you to take your Social Security. One, based on your age, based on your health, and based on the longevity in your genes, because those are important things that people need to consider. And you don't want to start taking it early just because here's the deal. At this stage of the game, if Social Security gets to the point where they have to reduce benefits, they're going to reduce everybody's benefit. Now you're getting a lower benefit to start with. And so you should really think about maxing out that benefit. So if they have to reduce benefits, your reduction is going to be on at least a bigger part of the pie.
Talk a little bit more, Philip. How do you go through and see how Social Security is going to fit in with everything else that they have?
So when we sit down to do our income planning, Jen, we ask all of our folks that we're doing that for to get us a copy of their Social Security statement. It's going to show, okay, look, if you retire 62 at 66 and whatever, or 67, whatever your full retirement age is, and then what happens if you wait to 70? What do those numbers look like? And we take that information and put those different scenarios into our income planning process to help people really look at the numbers to decide if taking out more money out of their investments now and letting their Social Security grow, that could make sense sometimes. There's other advisors that don't like to hear that because that means you're taking money away from them and spending it. That's less dollars they have to earn their money on. But it is an option that people need to look at and need to weigh the pros and cons of using their current assets and letting their Social Security build down the road. And that's exactly why, Jen, we developed our core retirement design to help people through this whole process of risk analysis, tax analysis, income analysis. I mean, it takes all three of those things to get you into and through retirement. If one of those little things is off, it can mess up the whole plan. That's why we developed the core retirement design. Give us a call, 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis, where we'll walk you through the analysis of where you are now to see if you're on the right track. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler, and I am Jen Rezac alongside that number one more time, 863-285-3815. So aside from all this pressure on Social Security and some of the concerns that people might have about that, retirees also need to be aware of tax increases on the horizon. And you mentioned a tax analysis as part of this core retirement design, Philip. How can we learn about existing opportunities to take action, save on taxes now before we start to see some of those increases that we've been anticipating for a few years now?
The last year to benefit from our current tax structure is 2025, because in 2026, welcome back to the old tax system. And we've run some numbers and it's not pretty. And that's just giving where we are right now. That doesn't include what happens when Congress decides they have to increase taxes because inflation, because interest rates have gone up. All these things are going to catapult us into even higher tax brackets, Jen, and folks need to be prepared for that. Don't believe the bull out there that, it's only going to affect those that make over 400,000. Folks, it's going to trickle down to all of us one way or another. And so you need to be prepared for that.
At the end of the day, the end goal for really everyone that you work with is implementing strategies so their income lasts as long as they need it to last. That's really the end goal. What are some ways we can preserve our retirement savings so it will last as long as we need it to last?
There's really two things that need to be diversified, right? Okay. We need to diversify our money from growth, safety, liquidity. And when I say safety, I mean things that will not lose value, not just less value. And then on the other side, we need to be tax diversified. 90% of the folks out there have 90% of their money is in their 401k or their IRA. That's going to be fully taxable when they retire and start taking money out of it. We want to make sure that we have some in the tax deferred bucket, like their 401k and IRA. We need to have some in their taxable bucket. They're non-qualified money, so it's there when they need it. They don't have to worry about tax implications when they pull it out. And then the other bucket is the tax-free bucket. We want to try to get it allocated as much as we can to all three of those buckets. Mm-hmm. And that's really been my focusing goal this last 2 years, is that this is a bigger problem now that inflation's really hit than any of us dreamed it could be. That is our focus now, is to get people to the point where they possibly could have a tax-free retirement. And running out of money is often the biggest fear that folks have. Now, I'll tell you, here recently, obviously, the political situation and the economy have kind of risen, maybe even a little above that. But running out of money is a big deal. And people want to make sure that the money they saved is going to last as long as they do. And as people continue to live longer and longer, that becomes a reality that we need to make sure is in place.
Mm-hmm.
You retire today, you could live another 30 years at the rate health and things are really making some improvements. So we want to help folks create budgets. We want them to help uncover risks that they may not even know about within their portfolios and their 401ks. We want to help them learn about other options available when it comes to generating income in retirement. There's so many things that are out there that not everybody understands or takes advantage of. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that folks out there are doing that. And so I want to invite folks to give us a call at the number 863-285-3815, because in this process that we drive through, the main thing we want to do is we want to make sure that folks have an understanding of this core retirement design, that they understand that they need to know what their risk is. They need to know what the income is, and they need to know what their tax complications are going to be. Give us a call again, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis phone conversation. We'll walk you through the process and make sure you're on the track you need to for the retirement you always dreamed of. That number one more time, 863-285-3815.
More insights from Philip coming up next when the Statler Financial Radio Show continues. We'll be back.
In times of volatility, the only wrong move is not making one. Call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services today and find out where you currently stand with your portfolio. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Philip, millions of Americans' money is in something like a traditional IRA. In fact, the total value of all of those accounts in 2020 was more than $19 trillion nationally. A lot of money in these types of accounts, right?
There is a lot of money there, a lot of money. So, it's easier that way, right? Because a lot of people have 401ks, and so they're able to build up that savings. And if it's not a 401k, it's a 403b or some deferred comp. There's a lot of different retirement accounts out there that they've been able to put money into. Now, so you've already made the right decision, folks. You've made the right decision. You're putting money away and to save for your retirement. And that's the right choice. Mm-hmm. But I want to help you learn about all the other decisions you need to make when it comes to taking money out of your retirement accounts. Right. You've done a good job of putting money in. The secret is, how do you get it out most effectively and pay the least amount of taxes on it? And that's the trick, Jen.
Yeah, that is a really good point there. And as we get into some of these options for your accounts, that's what you have to understand. The type of the 401k or IRA, the type of account you have, Philip, that really matters when it comes to how your retirement income will be taxed. This is not something that we can afford to overlook, right?
Absolutely not. You need to understand how those plans work in terms of pre-tax and after-tax money. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks, they're putting money in a 401k and they don't know, is it going into a pre-tax or an after-tax, right? The pre-tax is like a traditional IRA. You've never paid tax on that money. So when you pull money out of it, you're going to have to pay some tax. If you've already paid tax on that money, after-tax money, there's a lot of 401ks that have Roth provisions in them, like a Roth IRA. And so, hey, if you've got a Roth provision and you're in a lower tax bracket, that may be what you need to be doing. So pre-tax accounts are pretty much your 401ks, though some of them now actually do have some Roth provisions within them that you can make that election to use. Traditional IRAs, 403Bs, which in my lifetime, I've only seen one Roth 403B. You don't see those very often, and it's got to be a real specialized deal. Mm-hmm. And then 457s, which are deferred comp plans, are all tax-deferred pre-tax accounts. Post-tax are going to be your Roth IRAs, and that's pretty easy, and your Roth provisions within your 401ks.
So with your 401k or your IRA, you need to know the rules for taking money out of those accounts. Not only do we need to understand how they will be taxed, but Philip, what do we need to know about what we call required minimum distributions? That's when we have to start taking money out. What's a real high level thing we need to know about?
So let's talk about required minimum distributions, Jen. Yep. So first, let's talk about the acronym, right? Because that's what people need to understand is when somebody says your RMD, that is the acronym for your required minimum distribution. Yeah, that's what you'll see that more often than not. Hey, have you taken your RMD? And people will look at me like I've got three eyeballs.
What the heck is that?
Yeah, what is that? But it's easy, right? Your required minimum distribution is your RMD. So a couple things to realize is that there's been some changes with the Secure Act that was passed back in the end of 2019. And one of the changes was that now the required minimum distribution, that RMD, now you get to take it at 72 instead of 70 and a half. So that's a big deal, right? So it pushes it out a year and a half further down the road than what you had to before. And so you need to know that. The other thing you need to know is that RMDs do not apply to Roth IRAs. So if you have a Roth IRA, guess what? You don't have to take any money out of it if you don't want to.
Okay.
Government doesn't care. You've already paid tax on that money, right? So they don't care. You also, your 401ks are subject to RMDs. Mm-hmm. The only exemption there is if you are over 72, still working for your current employer whose 401k that you're contributing to.
Okay.
You don't have to take any money out of it as long as you're working.
Okay.
But if you stop working in June, guess what? You have to take an RMD out of that account if you're over 72.
Okay. So if you are still, because you would still be in that phase of contributing to it if you're still working. So that's why they can't force you to start taking money out. Okay.
Yep.
But again,
so that's the case.
But again, this is where things start to get a little bit complicated and really important for us to have somebody who can help us make sure that we understand the rules. So Philip, just talk real quickly about what your process looks like for helping us analyze what's going on with our money and what are some options that we need to consider. Tell me what your process is like.
So when we look at it, the first thing we want to do is have a 30-minute phone call with somebody, right? We want to understand what their big concerns are, where they are, and we want to make sure that we've got a plan in place that's going to help them. If not, then I want to point them in the right direction to make sure they get the help they need and they're going to be going down the right path. If I can't help them, I want to make sure I give them enough and point them in the right direction where they can get the help they need. That's number one. Number two is we want to walk through and put together ultimately an income plan for them. We want to start out by making sure that they don't have too much risk in their portfolio. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place for taking money out of their retirement accounts in the most effective and tax efficient way as possible. That's why we developed our core retirement design. And you can give us a call to schedule that 30-minute phone consultation. It's that easy, Jen. Just give us a call at 863-285-3815 and tell the receptionist, hey, I want to schedule a 30-minute consultation with Philip. It's that simple. We'll reach out, we'll give you a call, and we'll have a conversation about where you are and where you're trying to get to.
That number again, 863-285-3815 for that quick conversation. There's a lot you can uncover there. Talking today about 401k and IRA decisions. There's a couple more things I want to make sure that we get to, Philip, before our next break. When we're talking about taking money out of our accounts, there are taxes that can apply when we are withdrawing income, which we've spent some time talking about here. Also, there are penalties that can apply if we don't follow the rules. And this is a really big deal. What do we need to know as a retiree about the penalties with those required minimum distributions if you don't do this the right way?
Absolutely, Jen. That is so true. They are substantial penalties. And I'm going to talk about, before I did the RMD one, I want to talk about the early retiree one.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So look, if you're not 59 and a half, because there's folks that retire at 55, right?
Sure.
And 57. Well, if you're not 59 and a half, then you can't start taking money out of your IRA without paying a 10% penalty for early withdrawal. There are some caveats for 401ks. If you play by some specific rules, you might have access to that money. But your IRAs, you don't have access to until you hit that 59 and a half. So that's a 10% penalty if you take money out of your IRA prior to that.
Wow.
Now, the RMD, let's say that you're 72 and you forgot to take your RMD. Well, that can be a problem because if you don't take your required minimum distribution, there is a 50% penalty that the IRS assesses for that missed RMD. So let's say you're supposed to make $1,000 RMD, required minimum distribution, that year, and you didn't do it. The IRS can come back and charge you $500 penalty for not taking it out, and you still have to take it out the next year and pay tax on it.
Holy moly.
So it's kind of a double whammy there, Jen.
Yeah. And as it turns out, Philip, even death is an excuse
That's
to
right.
skip
No,
this,
not
right?
excuse. Hey, even the year you die, somebody's got to take that RMD out.
Yeah, so if you inherit that, so this is, I mean, obviously, if you're the one who dies, it doesn't matter to you, but if you inherit that IRA from a non-spouse, from a parent, then it's on you to make sure that's been taken by December 31st of the year that the death occurs. So it's not like, oh, mom died and now we don't have to worry about this anymore. No, somebody still has to do that.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And get this, I mean, we talk about the Secure Act, and they're actually, earlier in the year, we spent some time with Ed Slott, and he went through. There's new proposed regs out there when it comes to beneficiary IRAs that you inherit from non-spouses. Mm-hmm. And those rules have changed substantially. So if you're not, working with somebody that understands those and is on top of all those new IRA rules, that can be a problem, especially if you just inherited somebody's IRA.
Right.
I got to tell you, it's a big change that just came through the pipeline that people need to be aware of.
And this is why it's so important to talk about having some of these difficult conversations ahead of time, because, Philip, if you are the person who inherits an IRA because you're the beneficiary from somebody who passed away, you're going to be dealing with the emotions of that loss and that death. And I feel pretty confident in saying I can guarantee the last thing you want to be thinking about is messing with RMDs and thinking about getting this right, because you're dealing with your own grief. And this is why we talk about getting this done ahead of time. If you're the person who owns this and you're leaving it to somebody, do the planning that you need to do so that way they're not scrambling to react to this. You want to make sure things are set up. Because again, Philip, when we talk about these RMDs, Forbes says required minimum distributions, they can trigger the highest penalty in the tax code if you don't follow the rules. You do not want these steep penalties and potentially higher taxes swiping away at your retirement savings, leaving you with just a fraction of the money that you were counting on for your retirement.
You're absolutely right. If you make a little mistake with your required minimum distribution from your IRA or your other retirement accounts, the penalty for not taking that full amount of your RMD is 50% of the amount that you should have taken, in addition to the income taxes on that distribution. Now, listen, I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. They could trigger higher taxes on your Social Security benefits. And get this, they can cause higher Medicare premium surtax down the road. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up those steep penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes. So listen, for folks today, if you saved at least $150,000 for retirement, give us a call at 863-285-3815 and let's schedule a 30-minute call to make sure that you're doing things the right way and on the right track for the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that number is 863-285-3815. I want to help make sure that you have the retirement you always dreamed of by walking through our core retirement design. Again, all you have to do is give us a call, 863-285-3815, and schedule your 30-minute phone call. It's that simple, folks. Don't leave it to chance.
Whether it's a 401k or an IRA that you have for retirement, one thing is certain: you cannot treat that retirement account like an ATM. Spending down your savings too quickly and running out of money is an option that you just cannot afford. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
You can't see it, but you sure can feel it. The economy is struggling right now. Do you know how it might affect your retirement? Some retirement plans take into account economic downturns, stock market dips, interest rate fluctuations. Does yours? Take charge of your retirement by calling Philip Statler at 863-285-3815. Philip and his team at Statler Financial have been helping families prepare for retirement for over 20 years. They will help address the current economic situation and help you create a retirement plan designed to give you the confidence to move forward. Opportunities can exist regardless of economic conditions. Call the team, Philip Statler with Statler Financial at 863-285-3815 and find out ways you can prepare now for your retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Call them now. Schedule a visit. Let's get started. Firm offers insurance services. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Check him out online at statlerfinancial.com. Or as we get back into it, if you hear something you want to get some answers on, 863-285-3815 is how you can have that conversation with Philip today. That's 863-285-3815. Talking today about 401k and IRA decisions, and whether it is a 401k or an IRA that you have for retirement, one thing is certain: you cannot treat this account like a big old ATM where you just go grab cash whenever you need it. So, Philip, give me some strategies that you recommend here.
Unfortunately, Jen, I've seen people think they can do that.
Oh, boy.
And it has bitten them pretty bad when it comes tax time, right? So one of the things that you look at is you need to have a strategy for withdrawing that money from those accounts. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Don't just start accessing money and taking it out just whenever you want to.
Willy-nilly, I think, is the...
That's right. Willy-nilly. That's the word I was looking for.
Technical term.
Right? So we want to have a distribution strategy in place. And there's several that you can use. Right. So one would be take a fixed dollar amount out, whether that's every year, every month, every quarter. Mm-hmm. Typically, I know when we look at that, and that's kind of where we look at starting with is a fixed dollar amount that we adjust for inflation periodically. And that usually works the best because, and a monthly distribution, I think, works the best because people are used to getting that paycheck every month, right? It comes in, their pension comes in every month, their Social Security comes in every month. Hey, here's one more distribution comes in every month to pay their bills with. So that's the fixed dollar withdrawal. You pick out what you need within reason, right? That's why you need to have the income plan to make sure that you don't take out too much at one time, because that can be devastating to your total retirement plan. So the other one that you can use is limit withdrawals to just the income that your portfolio produces, right? Okay. You're just going to take the income out. You're not going to take any principal out. which that gives you some fluctuations, right? Because your income could be down one month and up the next month, because a lot of times if you have a stock portfolio, well, everybody pays dividends at a different point in time. So one company's quarter is not another company's quarter. So that could be, it gives you an uneven stream of income there. So, but it's an option, and people do that. They'll just take the dividends off their portfolio, and that's the income they use. The other thing you have to be careful on that one, though, is that you may not take enough. If you're having to take RMDs, that may not give you enough to cover your RMD. So you have to make sure you run those calculations. Okay. Yeah. The other is you create some kind of income floor. So, you look at your accounts and decide at what point does your income kind of floor out. This is a minimum I need, and that's my income floor. And then, hey, everything else is going to get reinvested. Bucket your money. That's one of our favorites, is to kind of bucket it, and we'll create buckets: emergency bucket, income buckets, and then growth buckets, right? So we know we're going to take money out of the income bucket, and that way it's going to last for our lifetime. Another one, well, let's go back to buckets just a minute, because people, when they look at buckets, sometimes misunderstand. I think it's important that, because people aren't working anymore, they have a hard time figuring out, okay, what's my emergency money? Because, you always tell people, hey, keep 6 months of your income. Right. So if you get laid off, you got that income. Well, you're working, that's fine. But when you're not working, you're retired, well, your income is your income, right? It's your Social Security, your pension, and whatever you take out of your account. So, but I still feel like you need to have a bucket of emergency money, right? So we'll tell our clients, look, you need to have $20,000 to $50,000, depending upon your comfort level, sitting there for emergencies. Appliances go out, or you need a new roof, or something that's major. Granted, a new roof, most likely insurance is going to cover, but they may not cover it today, right? We need to get it paid for. So that's the things we look at there. Another option that a lot of folks use, especially if they have a pension and they don't need any additional money out of their retirement accounts, is they'll just take the minimum RMD, right? They want to minimize what they have to take out. They're only going to take their RMD out. They'll work on other ways to help reduce their taxable income in order to do that. The last one I want to cover, and we do this when we do our income planning specifically, is what account sequences do we use to minimize taxes? So if you have a Roth IRA, hey, we want to mix that into the blend so we're not paying tax on all the money we take out. You have a non-qualified account, we want to mix that into the blend to make sure that we reduce taxes as much as possible when we're taking money out of that income plan. So, those are kind of the areas that you need to look at, and some distribution strategies that are out there. And I'm sure that other folks have created their own type of distribution strategy out there. But I would just caution you that it needs to be something that mathematically it's going to last your lifetime. That's the number one concern I always have. And then make sure that there's some buildup in there to help cover inflation.
So as we are developing that strategy for taking money out of these accounts, how do we figure out how much income we'll need those different accounts to generate in the first place?
Well, it goes back to budgeting, which nobody likes to talk about.
No, it's the worst.
So, and that's why we developed the income plan, because that's going to help us determine where the money's going to come from. So we look at how much are we going to get from Social Security? How much are we going to get from pensions? And then what's the shortfall? Hey, look, if your budget says I need, $5,000 a month, then okay, how much is Mr. and Mrs. Social Security going to be? Do we have a pension that's going to help contribute that $60,000? And then ultimately you have a shortfall. What is that shortfall that I need to make up? And that's what we're going to solve for. A good rule of thumb, and I think we've talked about this in an earlier show, is that the 4% rule, especially in the volatility we're seeing now, you need to throw it out the window, because that's probably too much right now. You need to look at maybe a 2.8, 3.2% withdrawal rate. If you're having to take out more than that to meet your expenses, then there's a chance that you could run out of money before you run out of life. And we don't want that to happen to anybody. Jen, that's why we developed our core retirement design, to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. And so part of our process is a 30-minute, no obligation, free phone call, 30 minutes of our time to ask us questions that you may have, to see where you're headed, to make sure you're on the right path, and to give you some recommendations to make sure that you are on that right path. It's that simple. All you have to do is give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement phone call. That's all you have to do. It's that simple. And we'll answer your questions and help make sure you're on the right track for retirement.
Now, Philip, as we talk about 401k and IRA decisions, some people might want to take that traditional account, that traditional IRA or 401k, which is tax deferred, and do a conversion, convert that into a Roth account so then they can have tax-free withdrawals later. So talk a little bit about that strategy. Is this something that a lot of people do, and what do we need to know about it?
So I'm going to lay out a couple things here, Jen, because it is a topic of discussion that we have with our clients and prospective clients that we talk to. Because one of the things that I have seen in the years that I've been doing this is that folks waste tax brackets. And I don't want to see anybody waste a tax bracket. So that's what we try to do is, hey, if you're paying zero taxes, that's a problem, especially if you're sitting on an IRA. Let's convert some of that IRA and let's use that tax bracket to maximize your retirement benefits. And so part of our strategy within our core retirement design is to figure out, does a Roth conversion make sense for you? And let's be honest, it does not make sense for everybody. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of folks that if they did it, it's going to push them into a 22 or 24% tax bracket.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so you have to think twice before doing that. It doesn't always make sense, but you don't know whether or not it makes sense for you if you don't run the numbers. And so that's part of our core retirement analysis, is to analyze that for folks to make sure that it's in the right boat, that you're doing the right thing, because it does cause you to pay some taxes. It can also do some other things. It can help cause you to lose some tax deductions and tax credits. It can cause you to pay more tax on your Social Security. And the biggest thing that I've seen people get hit with that they didn't expect was they get hit with higher Medicare premiums. Wow. And the issue is it takes 2 years or so for that to catch up with you, and you forgot why you're getting hit with it now, right? Right. So, but it is still something that everyone needs to look at, and they need to run the results by their qualified tax advisor to make sure they're doing the right thing when it comes to their IRA, Jen.
So bottom line, it's important that we have an income strategy for our retirement. I think you've made that pretty clear. When is the best time to get with a trusted financial partner to make that happen and to take a look at some of the decisions we're thinking about making? Maybe we think we want to do a Roth conversion, but we need somebody to look over this and help us understand all the details that maybe we might be missing.
Well, it's kind of like it's like planning for vacation, right? The earlier you start, the better you are. And so what does that look like for folks? Look, it's never too early. Ideally, you want to start probably 5 years before you're going to retire is kind of the sweet spot, but you can start 10 years before. So if you're in your late 50s, it makes sense. If you're going to work till 65 or 67, it makes sense that in your late 50s to go ahead and start looking at putting together an initial plan to make sure you're on track for your retirement.
So how much should you save for retirement? Where do you save it? How do you make sure it will last after you leave your job for good? Philip, those are some of the questions you probably have if you're getting close to retirement.
Jen, savings is a good start to get ready for the next chapter in your life. But you need to do more than just save. You need to have that income strategy for after you stop earning that regular paycheck. When you don't have money coming in, you need to have a plan for how it goes out. If you're listening to me right now and you don't have an income strategy, folks, I invite you to give us a call. Let us help you see where you're at right now. Talk about budgets. We'll talk about, risks to your portfolio, risks that may threaten your retirement when it comes to stock market volatility, inflation that we're seeing right now, Tax increases coming down the road. These are all things that can eat into your retirement. And we can have a conversation about that in that 30-minute phone call that we'll happily provide you. Learn about different options for generating income in retirement and make sure that your standard of living in retirement stays where it is, even with the rising cost. Folks, this phone call is absolutely complimentary, no cost, no obligation. I'm giving you 30 minutes of our time just to make sure you are on the right path. If you've saved at least $150,000 for retirement, give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your no obligation core retirement phone call. It's that simple, folks. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. Don't let this chance get away, especially if you're 5 years or less away from retirement. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago and you looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Well, it could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Team have helped hundreds of families plan for retirement for more than 20 years. They'll help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up a visit with Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial. Just give them a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 863-285-3815. Firm offers insurance services but may not give tax advice. Advisory services are offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Philip Statler. He's president and CEO of Statler Financial Services right here in Sebring. Every week he gets questions about all things retirement, so we're going to take a little time here in this part of the show, open up our Statler Financial mailbag, and go over some common retirement questions. So, Philip, our first question is from Jill, and Jill writes that she and her husband are getting a divorce after being married for almost 30 years. She's been working outside of the home for the last 5 years, so she's got some work friends and a little income of her own, but she feels like she's just starting over and she doesn't even know the questions to ask first. She wants to know some of the things she should think about now that she's planning for her own future.
Well, that's a tough question, Jill.
Yeah.
You need to know, number one, if you're working, if you have a 401k plan, then we need to be making sure that we're making some contributions to that 401k plan. Now, obviously, I'm not an attorney, but an area that you need to at least ask your attorney about is if your spouse has some retirement accounts, can you have access to some of that? Right? Can you roll some of that into your IRA? That's an area because that may be, after 30 years of marriage, that may be one of the bigger financial assets that you have is going to be his retirement accounts. So we want to look at that and see if there may be something there that you can grasp and at least help you get started in the right direction and have some assets there to fall back on. But again, if you have a 401k, let's make sure that we're contributing at least enough to get the full match on that part. If there's not a 401k, try to develop some kind of savings plan where you're putting money into a Roth IRA because you'd rather pay the taxes now in the low tax environment we're in versus later when we may be in a higher tax environment. Those are probably a couple things that I would look at right now.
Good questions there, Jill. And that really has become more of an issue that retirement planners like you are dealing with now. I know those divorce rates among people who are getting close to retirement and who are in retirement has really gone up. And there's some big financial ramifications. So just, Jill, you're certainly not the only one who's going through this. So those are some good questions there. Our next question is from Mark, and he and his wife have started having some serious discussions about what they want to do in retirement. Mark has had to travel for work for years, so he wants some peace and quiet, and he wants to go fishing. But his wife stayed home to raise their 2 boys. She's been telling all her friends about all the places that they're going to go once they retire, so they have some different ideas here. Mark says he's done traveling for good, but doesn't know how to tell her. So now what? So how do we make everybody happy here, Philip? This is a tough situation.
I didn't know that I was going into the marriage counseling business here, Jen.
It's kind of where you are sometimes, right? Oh gosh,
it is, and I can understand both sides. And so I think that there needs to be a discussion, right? We need to sit down and have that discussion about what we expect. And so maybe it's not all or nothing, right? So maybe we travel together once a year, and maybe the rest of the time, she goes ahead and kind of sets up some of the things she wants to do, and he can stay at home and golf or piddle in the yard or whatever he wants to do in retirement. And who knows, a couple of years of doing that, and he may get on that train of, okay, I'm ready to travel again and do some other stuff.
Right.
But, yeah, I think it's having that conversation of what can we do together, and then what do we need to not do together.
Just got to have those money conversations for do we have the money for her to do some of these trips, and then he's got the money for his hobbies, and then they can switch that up down the road if they need to, right? Yep.
It's all about compromise.
Compromise and keep those planning conversations going, because we might change our minds here one of these days. All right. Next question is from Paul. He wants to know the best kind of annuity to buy. Paul says he doesn't want a bunch of stuff. He just wants one simple place to keep his money.
Paul, I'd love to say here's a simple answer. Unfortunately, your question doesn't allow a simple answer. There's a lot of different annuities out there. There's not a best annuity. Okay, it's all based on your circumstances, your situation. I will say this though: you don't want to put all your money into an annuity. That I do know. There's some planning that needs to be done there, Paul, and so it's sitting down with us or another financial advisor, and really and truly looking at where you are and what you want your money to do for you going forward. Whether that means we need additional income, we can put together an income plan, or whether we don't really need any more income, we just need some fun money and stuff like that to budget for the fun stuff we want to do in retirement. Those are all things that we can address, but there's not one best annuity to go buy. It all depends on your circumstances. Don't let anybody tell you that there's this one great annuity that's the best annuity out there, because it all depends on you, your circumstances, and what you're trying to accomplish. Unfortunately, that's about the best advice I can give you on that.
Right. And, I think that's another area almost where there's compromise, Philip, because I think what Paul is looking for is a little bit of simplicity, and I can appreciate that. Sometimes, Philip, you might sit down with somebody who just tries to make everything out to be too complicated and too complex. And really, that's kind of where you fall. You want it to be simple for people. It's not rocket science. They need to be able to understand it without overcomplicating it, but just recognizing that too simple is kind of a bit of a danger zone too, right?
It is. So we want to make sure that we use the right tools for your circumstances, right? And so what you're telling me is you want simple, and I get that, but we also need to be careful in how we arrange things, because we don't know what tomorrow holds. You might need your money quickly, or at least some of it. And so it's a planning process. And I think that I understand you want to keep things simple, and I get that. And there is simple, but it still takes planning. And you need to have a plan in place which is what I think is really important in your circumstances.
Let's do one more question here. This last one comes from Barb. Another tough relationship situation. Barb says, my mother just died, and now I feel like all our family does is argue over what to do with her house and who will be in charge of what. My siblings and I are in our 60s, but it feels like we're kids again. I don't know if you can help us with our arguments, but can you please just tell people why it's so important to take care of these decisions ahead of time? Gosh, that's a tough thing to be in, but she's right. We got to take care of this stuff ahead of time, right?
We do. And so there's a couple things here, right? So if mom died without a will, that's a problem, right? And so courts are really going to be in charge of how things are then divided up. Mm-hmm. If mom died with a will, the will is going to specify the things she's asking about. Who's in charge? Well, the will is going to say who's in charge. The will is going to say, here's how everything gets divided. So not having that in place can be problematic for the family. And so you don't want to put your family in that situation. You want to at least have a will in place. You want to at least have a power of attorney in place so that somebody can take care of you if you can't take care of yourself. If you have enough assets and you're in a position, maybe you need a trust. I don't know, without looking at your situation. Not everybody needs a trust. More people have a trust than really need one from what I've seen. But there are advantages to having a trust. There could be some advantages of not having a trust, depending on your circumstances. And so that's one of those things that is very dependent upon where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. You're in a rough spot here because you got siblings all scrabbling over stuff, and that's not good. Mom died, and now we're fighting over everything. So it's better, folks. Listen, if you don't have a will in place or you haven't attached beneficiaries to your assets, that's why they create TOD, transfer on death, or POD, pay on death, so that you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff. It's taken care of. You've done it ahead of time. So those are some areas I think that you could look at. Obviously, it's too late for you, but a heads up to folks out there that, right, hey, take care of your stuff now so that your kids don't fight over it later. Right. That's right. Not what you want to have happen. And again, I'm not an attorney, but you need to have a relationship with an attorney that can help you set these things up properly, and to make sure that your final wishes are carried out the way you want them to be. Right. Because who wants their kids fighting over stuff? Nobody does.
Yeah.
But they're doing it.
Happens.
That's right. And they're doing it because you didn't take action to prevent it. And you could have.
So Philip, I think that the big message for a lot of people here is just get that planning done. So tell us how we can get in touch with somebody like you to get started on identifying what all the weak spots are and what's going on with our money, what's missing, and how do we get everything in place so we don't leave a mess for our kids.
Absolutely, Jen. They can give us a call. I mean, it's something we do all the time for folks is walk them through that process. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Or, Jen, they can go to my website, statlerfinancial.com. There's a link to my calendar right there.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. That's all the time we have for this week, but be sure to tune in again next time for more insights from Philip. We'll talk to you then.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of